All right, we're on live in New York City. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving break. I'm still waking up. All right, so let's do some warm-up problems. Some of these might be review for the people who came in for review also, but this would be a good opportunity to definitely bang it out without notes. All right, so let's try writing write a function that takes in an array and returns only the even numbers in the array. Write one with filter and one with reduce. So I want you to write the same problem twice, but with two different types of implementations. Okay? Questions on that? All right, let's give it like 10, 15 minutes. One version of filter. That makes sense? Yeah. Let's see if we still be on it. All right, that's been long enough. Go ahead and send me some of your solutions, and I'll fix them. I guess is that an effective way for you guys? Okay, yeah. So send me some of your solutions, and we'll make them work. Yeah, if it's working, don't send it. 'Cause- all right, I've gotten a bunch of them. So. So if this was hard for you, definitely need to practice more. We went over these on Wednesday, and they were in the code share. So we want to make sure that we practice on our own, especially when we got a big break. That was a study break. So we will get through it. I think I have a lot of examples here. Let's see here. Yeah, why is it not working? There we go. All right, I think we have enough here. All right. So let's see what's going on here. So our first one here, we have function. Someone wrote function get evens, and they're passing in an array. Cool. And then here, they're doing iterative stuff, right? We can see that they have an empty array that they want to push. They're looping through this array. They're checking if it's the array they want, and they're pushing it in. And then at the very end, they're returning their output. Pretty cool. Definitely doesn't use filter. So it looks like they use filter down here. Okay, so filter is a method on an array, right? If we do array.prototype, we are adding something to the array's prototype. This is how we did our own filter, like array.prototype.myFilter, and then we were defining that actual function. So that's going to give us some trouble. So let's just get rid of all that. Filter's got to be called on an array. I think this is the array that. Oh my gosh, I hate when it does that. This is the array that it's trying to be called on, so let's move that. And then filter takes in a callback function, so we can make it get evens. That's fine. This is like a loose example of what we wanted to do. So if we've got this, our get evens has to be different, because what does filter do? Can someone tell me what filter actually does, or what it is? Winter?
Creates an array of only elements that meet the condition.
Yeah. Right. So Winter says it returns a new array of elements that meet the condition. So, in other words, filter is an array method that gets called on an array. It's going to loop under the hood. It's going to loop through that array, and with each element, it's going to call the callback function and pass in that element as the argument. If the outcome of that callback call is truthy, it's going to add it to its own output array. So it's going to do a lot of what this is here, but instead of it taking in an array, it would just take in an element. We don't need that. Don't need that. And we would say if element modulo 2 is equal to 0, we can just return true. Else return false. Don't need this. Then if we run it, we get a bunch of crazy stuff. What do we get? So I think we have extra brackets and stuff. There we go. So that's how we would just call filter on an array, right? This isn't exactly what we asked for, because we wanted to write a function that took in an array. Instead, we just are using an array and calling filter. This is what we wanted to be like the guts of the function, right? We wanted something more like function evens that would have taken an array, and then it would have returned this. So we would have said array dot like that. That's the answer we were looking for. If you wanted to write your own thing here, which you didn't have to do that. Questions on that? Crispina?
Are there supposed to be two dots there?
Two.
After array dot?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Good catch. Okay, so let's keep going. Looks like we got another get evens here. What do we got right now? It says undefined. Okay, so this is using reduce. Let's talk about reduce. What is reduce? Can someone tell me how it works and what it does? Yeah, Andre.
Takes an array and it works down to like a single value that moves through the whole array.
Yeah. So he says it's an array method, loops through the array, and returns a single element of some sort, the accumulator. Doesn't have to be a number. Can someone tell me how that gets determined with reduce? Sure. How does reduce get its initial accumulator? Diana. Yeah, perfect. So Diana said reduce takes in an optional initial value as a second argument with the callback. If if it's given that initial value, that's the accumulator from the beginning. Otherwise, it takes the first element of the array and turns that into its accumulator. Totally. Okay, so we've got our array. That looks good. It's going to return this. That looks good. And we're returning something here, but this is no longer part of our reduce function, right? We see that we're returning an accumulator here, but that's not in the reduce. Like we've already made our return here. So this is unreachable code. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm going to get rid of that completely. So then, okay, so what's going on with reduce? This takes in an accumulator and not an initial value, but a current element. That's what it's called back takes in. The initial value would go here as a second argument into reduce. For a problem like this, what do we want to be our initial value? Marteza.
Empty array.
What?
Because we want to return an array of an even number.
Yeah, so Marteza says we want to start with an empty array because we want to end with this new array of even numbers. So that sounds great. So then here it's like this is just something that's happening. We don't currently have an element available to us. So we got to use this accumulator, which is currently an empty array, and we want to use an if statement. We want to do some conditional logic here. So we want to say if, and instead of L, we want to use current L. So if our current L modulo 2 is equal to 0, then we want to push it into our accumulator. And then at the end, we just want to return our accumulator. So we have to keep returning that accumulator so that we have it for the next call. So when we try it now, still says get even. Sorry? Line 23 here. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, good catch. So Jenya's saying we aren't invoking this method, and we need to invoke it with parentheses. And it works. Questions on that? All right, let's do it again. So this person is giving us a empty output array. Our reduce that's the goal of our reduce is to return this array that's already been filtered. So we don't really need that. So I'm going to comment that out. Don't need it. Current element. They were using this with without considering what the accumulator is doing. So we want to pass in. We want to pass in our empty array as our accumulator. So then here we're saying if accumulator modulo 2, this should be current element. We would want to push that into the accumulator. And we don't care otherwise. So we can just get rid of that. We're only concerned about evens. And we want to return our accumulator. Stop me if you have questions. Yeah, we don't need this, and we also still need to return something from our function. Good call, Nikki. Works.
Can you say again why you put an empty array as or I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, you can put anything in as the accumulator. Object, empty array, number, string, empty string, anything. And yeah, the way reduce works is it's going to iterate through it. It's going to take with each callback call, it's going to take its accumulator and the current element, and then it's going to do whatever, right? Whatever the callback is doing, and then it's going to return the accumulator again. And then that accumulator will get used for the next function call. And it just keeps going all the way until the end, and then we end up with our final accumulator, and that's what reduce will return at the very end. So, that was the challenge of this question, was to try to recognize to use the empty array here, because we're essentially using reduce the exact same way we would use filter. It's just to show and to get comfortable using reduce. If you were to really see this problem in the wild, you should probably use filter. To one line, boom, bang, bam. But if they say you can't use filter, well, then you can use reduce. Reduce can do it all, kind of. Christina.
After it says, on line 27, after it says reduce and it has some parentheses, inside it says ACC and current L. I know what those stand for, and I'm wondering if reduce is making those things, the positioning of those things, they're taking that argument, reduce is taking those two arguments as not a keyword, but their positioning inside the parentheses is what's making it the accumulator and the current L. Like, we could call those things different things, but the position inside of it.
Yeah, so okay, quick clarification. Reduce's arguments are only the callback and that initial value. These are arguments inside of the callback that reduce takes. That said, that callback that reduce takes, this is the order. It's all, whatever is first here is going to be treated as the accumulator, and whatever here it will be treated as the current element.
I'm sorry, so my question was that the names of those things aren't really important, just the positioning of those things is the important thing.
That's right. The names, you don't have to have these names. You do have to have these positions. I recommend always using the exact same names. It's significantly less confusing. All right, let's look at the next one. Oh my God, not a good system. Okay. So let's take a look here. We've got constant reduce function takes in an array. Okay, so our first thing we see is we've created this output array, which kind of defeats the purpose of the goal, right? We want to just use reduce. So we're not going to need this. Get rid of that. But this looks good. Array reduce takes an accumulator and current element. That's great. Don't need these console logs. And then we're checking, so if our current element modulo the accumulator. So almost, but not quite, right? Because the accumulator is an array. So it's supposed to be. So we want to actually check if it's modulo 2. This person passed in 2 as their initial accumulator value, so that's probably what they were trying to do there, but we would have rather had it be an empty array. And so then they have to just do their logic in here. So if the current element is an even number, so I should say equal to 0, then inside here we can do accumulator.push current element. Whoops. Get rid of some of this like extra stuff here, so it's a little bit more readable. This should be tabbed in. Actually, all of this should be tabbed in. And then here they're returning this new array, which we no longer have access to. If we wanted to, we could just, maybe we can do that new array down here. We can make it into that and help this person. So let's try it. They're calling it reduce function. I spelled that right?
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you. And 1, 2, 4. Okay, we got a nice error here. Cannot read property push of undefined. Can we think of why? Why would accumulator be undefined here?
Doing push instead of an already method that's
Johnny?
Oh, I first like how to turn it, but then I see
We're going to consider me. I want to watch this twice. Like on line with the
Yeah, exactly. Well, sort of. So we don't need to return on line 38 because we're assigning it to a variable and returning here. But our callback function, reduce here, isn't returning anything, right? So we have to return the accumulator so that we have something on the next call. Right? Then it works. All right, how many more do we have? A couple more. All right. We've got, this looks like this would work, nearly. Let's check. So we've got a get evens with our filter here. Get evens. We get an empty array. Why do we get an empty array? Anyone know? Yeah, that would work. So basically, what Leo's saying in a more roundabout way is that we're not returning. So if I remove the curly braces, I'm doing an implicit return. The other option would be for me to just write a return here. And that would fix that. Let's go to the next one. Oops. Okay, so now we got get evens 2. Takes in an array. Okay, so this is looking good so far. We've, well, besides the syntax here, we've got our array. We're calling reduce on it. So our reduce should take in 2 arguments. So let's say accumulator and current element. And then this would go here. And we're saying if current element modulo 2 equals 0, then we want to push that. And then at the end of that, we want to return our accumulator. And then we got some little bit of some weird stuff. We got to finish this function call here. And then this needs to get moved to there. I think that will do it. Questions on that? We can run it. Evens. Sorry?
Evens.
Nice. So you got to call it by the right function name, right? Good catch. Jenny from the back, eagle eyes. Love it. All right, last one, and then we'll dive into. We'll take a little break, and then we'll go into our lecture for the day. So, and if this was hard or you want more practice with this, definitely go back. Go to that live stream from the Wednesday optional review. Like, this is all we did for like quite a few hours. So go back and look at that. That should definitely help. Okay, so we got get evens, good start. Takes in an array, cool. Returning array reduce. Okay, so this is very close, right? This one's pretty good. They've got their accumulator and their current element that they're just calling element. That's fine. We're saying if element modulo 2. So instead of returning the element here, we actually wanted to push that in to our accumulator. This was close. And then we have this accumulator plus plus. So this currently means nothing. That just kind of like, since we didn't give it an initial value, the accumulator would have defaulted to be the first value of the array, and then we would have just added that number to it each time. Not what we want. So I'm going to take it away. And then here, instead of returning, I'm going to return the accumulator. That looks good. And then this person just needed to pass in an initial value of an empty array. I think they're home free here. This was a very close one. Christina.
So when we were doing prototypes for reduce, was there a for loop in there, like a loop? Because I wanted to address what they were trying to do with the accumulator plus plus, like they were trying to move through the array, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is there like a for loop inside of reduce?
Yeah. So Christina's asking about the inner workings of reduce, and it's definitely there's a for loop. We're looping through it. All of these array methods, each map, filter, reduce, they can all be written with a for loop under the hood, and then they just call callbacks with each element. Great question. Any other remaining questions on our reduce work here?
Just to clarify once more, is that anything value?
Sorry?
Is that anything initial value?
Yeah, totally. Definitely experiment with it and try them out. We can set objects, arrays, strings, numbers, anything. So we got to break the habit of thinking a couple things, right? A lot of us think for using a for loop, there has to be an array involved. Nope, it's just numbers. A lot of us think that the output of reduce is going to be a number. Nope, it's whatever we want to do with our accumulator. Oh yeah, one more final thing that I really want to drive home that I see every day here is, okay, so if I have an array, and I make it 1, 2, 3, 4, and I go array dot, or I'll console log it actually. Console log array dot push 14. What's going to log to the screen? I'm going to give everybody a second. What do we think? What are some of our guesses? Janelle? What's it going to look like what's this console log going to print? Okay, that's fair. Trey?
It's going to print number 5 because I think right up that push, the push up method.
Okay, so Trey says it's going to push out. There's going to be a 5 because it's going to be the length of the array. What do we think? What else? Any other guesses? Any other sides? Leo? Yeah, so that's what Janelle said. All right, so if you think it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 14, raise your hand. All right, so we got like a mix. Okay. If you think it's just going to print out the number 5, raise your hand. If you don't know what it's going to be, fair. All right, let's do it. Yeah, so it's going to print out the number 5. Push evaluates to the length of the array. That's the return value of push. Always. Our array becomes this, right? But when we look at what push is, so I see a lot of times people, like for that reduce one, I'm surprised nobody sent it in. Maybe because I corrected it as I was walking around. But some people would return accumulator.push current element. But then that returns the length of the array, and then we no longer have that accumulator array on the next call. So this is a really common bug that I've been seeing. Got to retrain ourselves. The return value of array.push is the length of the array. Capiche? All right, so let's take a 5-minute break, be back in at 11, and then we'll go over async and await. Yeah. Oh, hey. It was fine. I didn't get to do as much coding as I wanted to. That's all right. No, I mean my wife. Yeah. Yeah, just her.
Send it somewhere else or?
No, just stayed at home. We watched Ozark. Sorry? I'm season 1. It's a good show. You're in it too? It's good, right?
It's really good.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
I love that girl with the bleach blonde hair.
Ruth.
Curly. Yeah, she's named.
Yeah, I love her.
So we're good.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was a good time. Yeah, I did some coding, but not as much stuff. No. No, I did see a friend on Saturday. We went for a walk and then got falafel. How about you?
Family, then my best friend's also Thursday and Friday. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like most people didn't practice. I'm worried.
I did, but I'm not as much as
It's all right. No, just have to double down. Yeah, that's good. Self-reflection.
Exactly. What do you think that works on?
Well, good job. Take a look at this. These are good things to cover. Do they feel better now? That's great.
Really? I was definitely not on this penis level.
I don't think I should be going through the units that we're gonna take the test on.
Good idea.
Really got some of those, events. So I didn't even get to like the importance.
Have to drill it today.
I just wanted to say that I did.
I know everyone's doing stuff. Good job. I like the notes. Oh, it's 11. All right, clap your hands if you can hear my voice. Clap your hands twice if you can hear my voice. We're gonna get going. I'm a punctual guy. So anyway, my goal is to get through this, relatively quick. I don't want to spend years on it. I know we have an exam coming up. I think it's on Wednesday, right? What? When Wednesday? Yeah. So, I want to give you guys a lot of time to study and review and to ask questions in regards to that kind of material. But I do want to hit on this. It's pretty cool. We're going to learn about async and await, which is totally awesome. You don't write it like that in there. It's just to give you some visual impact to the words. So why is async and await so cool? So it allows us to write asynchronous code in a way that seems more synchronous. That's like the main super hot topic. And we use try and catch statements, and it helps us. So like you may occasionally still need like a .then that takes in the response and all that. But when you use async and await, you can await for something to come back to continue on with the promise. And we'll see all that, and that way we'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So things to note, though, is that this works in asynchronous code. Okay, so if you make an asynchronous call and you want to wait for the outcome, and then you have synchronous code underneath it, that still runs right away. So this is still non-blocking. Okay, so let's talk about it a little bit. Okay, so things to note. Let's start off with this keyword async. Looks like this. Right. We're going to call it a bathtub, but they changed their mind. Boom. Terrible dad joke. I'm so ready. Anyway, so this is async, and something about async is that it will automatically return a promise if you put this in front of a function. So if I have a function and I call it like return the number 1, right? That looks good. And I say return the number 1, right? Not such a crazy looking function, but this is now a promise. So don't believe me? Let's check it out. I could write something like return 1 dot then alert. Right? Just gonna throw an alert to the screen. Oh, here So usually we wouldn't be able to write dot then on something, right? That would be kind of weird. But we got it. You return 1. Inspect. Probably be using this. Questions so far? Yeah, Winter. Oh, yeah, this, if you put async in front of a function, it will return a promise. Johnny.
ES6 format or it's only ES5?
Great question. I'll hit that in a second. Is that unless you have the same question? Do you have it different? Do you have a question? What was your question?
When you said that the promise is resolved and it's returning 1, I don't know what that means. What is it returning exactly? Return 1? What is that 1?
I'm just writing that. That was hard coded.
Let's see, I guess that's 4, line 4. It says return and then
I'm just returning the number 1. Just for fun, just to show you, because this is very much a regular, like, what would be a synchronous function. Typically. Here, watch. I'm going to do this first. I'm going to take away. Right, this is just a function that returns the number 1. No doubt about that, right? Okay. If I save this and went to run it. Oh, wait, hang on. Did I not save? Why would that? Definitely shouldn't have worked. That's weird. Maybe if I don't use alert. Definitely shouldn't work, but it might. And that would be an interesting thing to see. Let's see. There we go. I think alert was just like overriding, being like, whoa, alert. I'm just gonna throw an alert. I don't know why that was happening. That was really not the desired output. But we see we can't do then on a function. It says return that then is not a function, right? Because this would just be the number 1. Right? If you invoke return 1, here, let me invoke it. Should have invoked it before. There we go. Maybe it was because it wasn't invoked. It says return 1, then is not a function. Right? If we invoke a function, it just becomes something, right? It becomes the number 1, right? Does that make sense? Right? A function is what it evaluates to after being invoked. Okay, so this would be the number one dot then. It throws an error. Cannot do that. If I throw the word async, this now returns a promise. So I can use that. We get goodbye first and then hello, because this is a promise, right? So as soon as this becomes a promise, this moves over to the browser API and it gets off, so it's off the call stack. And then this is allowed to evaluate with on the call stack, pops off. When the browser API is finished with whatever, which this function would resolve immediately, right? This promise gets moved into the callback queue. Once the call stack is empty, the first item of the callback queue moves on to the call stack, and then we would see hello. Crispina.
You said that the promise is on the dot then, and then is there like a anonymous function after the dot then?
Yeah, this is just the,
Okay.
this is how we've been writing our thens. We usually write like response in here, right? And then we've been doing something.
So that's got a promise on it, and then the thing about promises is it's gonna wait.
No, none of this is waiting. I think we're getting confused. Without this word async, this throws an error because it just becomes the number one, and the number one isn't just a number, and you can't do dot then. Dot then is something that is called on a promise and returns a promise. Right, there's the three states of promises, like resolved, rejected, and some pending.
So async can transform a function like a promise type of.
Yep, this returns a promise. Here, if we console log, let me move this, and I do this, and I go log, turn one. Right, we've logged a promise to the screen. It's resolved with the response of 1. So we've just taken a regular function, and now it returns a promise. And we remember that asynchronous functions get moved over to the and get resolved in a browser API.
What do you have to invoke the function? You use the dot then?
So if I don't invoke a function, what happens? It's just the function definition. So here. Right, this is now just the definition of a
You
function.
still take the value of that, invoke becomes that. So you invoke it, right? And then dot then. If you want to like, 1 times 2 or something like that. You use that in the dot then parameter. You get the value in the parameter of dot then.
Like this in here?
That's the 1.
Let's see. Oops.
You log the rest. You log it in. Allow it still.
If I log what? Right, I've got a debugger in there. Whoops. I hit a debugger, and we're getting res. Right, it's 1. That's what our promise returns. That's the response of that promise, because our function returns 1.
Can I see your console again? Yeah. Can you go up? Keep going. Oh, okay, thank you.
No problem. Leo?
In the line 7, we just remove the parentheses. First one.
Here?
First one. After return 1. But after return 1, we just remove.
These?
Yeah.
So what would that be? What would return 1 be right now? Is it? I think it's a function definition. Oh, seems to still work somehow. Shouldn't. Oh, there it is. Doesn't work. Took a second to update. Right? Return. If we don't invoke a function, that function is just the definition of a function. Right? If I console log return 1 here. Thank you. Right, if I console log return 1, this is it, right? It's a function. So we can't call things on just a function necessarily. So that doesn't work. We have to invoke it to get the promise. Because that function's return value is now a promise. That's will resolve to the number 1. Questions on that? All right, now back to address Johnny. He said, hey, can we write this in ES6? Cool question. So let's write ES6. So you go const return 1. Right, that's the name, and then I just do this async. Same thing. Get rid of that. Now if I run this, I still get my goodbye hello. Can someone tell me why goodbye prints first? Winter.
Hello is waiting, and goodbye is like you get as soon as this is outside of that function. But that's why, because hello is waiting as the promise, and goodbye is just going.
Yeah. Right, so that's mostly right there, right? So main, this whole file gets loaded. That's like the main in the call stack, and it runs through it, and it goes return 1, and that sees as an asynchronous function, so it moves over to the browser API, continues down the call stack to console.log goodbye. That finishes off the call stack. This resolves immediately in the browser API, gets moved to the callback queue, and then since the stack is now empty, takes from the callback queue, goes onto the stack, and does its resolve. Sure.
Just to clarify, you said that async always returns a promise.
Yep.
The promise is the promise.
What do you mean?
What's the promise? Is it line 6?
This is returning a promise. Whenever you call this. So we did call it here, and so this returned a promise. And because that returned a promise, we could chain a .then on it. So,
On line 4,
mm-hmm.
we add a line before return and just put console log here.
Sure. Right, it's the return that's asynchronous. That might confuse people more though. Okay.
That log first.
Yeah, that log first. Don't get too caught up. If you call an asynchronous function, that's done. That goes over, and then you will continue to handle your code, and whenever that comes back, handle it. Don't count on things running in the asynchronous at a certain time. That's not a good way to program. So that's kind of why I removed it pretty quick. So questions on so far, just what async is doing. All right, so let's keep going. So then let's talk about the word await. So await's going to be kind of fun. So let's say I have let's move on to the next thing. Yeah.
When would you use anytime to use async?
You'll see. He asked when we want to use async await. You want to use them like a lot, potentially. It's a new thing, so a lot of code doesn't already have it, but it's replacing a lot of this .then stuff, and we'll see how that happens. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this stuff. Yoink. Oops. Just like give me some space here. Okay. Okay. So let's say I have this function called fire request, right? Const fire request, and I'm going to make this an async function. And I want to just go out and grab all of those movies, or the Studio Ghibli movies, right? So I'm going to say let response. Oops. Stop us. There we go. Equal. I'm going to say Axios dot get, and let me get this. Let me get those movies we already have. Yeah. This far? Or what? Sure. Looks like an old friend. Okay, films. Take that. Better, Jackie? I need this to be in. Okay, great. All right, so we've seen this kind of thing before, and I'm going to console.log response, and down here I'm going to fire my request. Okay, questions on this code so far? You're not?
Async is word now, or?
Yep. Async says I want this. This is an asynchronous function. All right, so let's see what happens. Refresh, and we get this pending. Okay, hopefully that's pretty much what we expected. All right, we made an asynchronous call, and we looked at what it returns. A promise returns a promise. So now let's throw in this special word await, and we'll do it here. And I say await, another keyword. What do we think? What do we think it's going to give us this time? Any guesses?
Then your async should resolve somehow, right?
And the way,
When a console log didn't. It has now probably, but like we didn't do anything with the movies, right? Because usually we have to say this dot then, and then we would get the response, and then we could look at it. But we didn't do it then. Spina?
I think I know what you're asking, but I don't understand the answer. I'm gonna say that it's not gonna be pending anymore, it's gonna be resolved.
Okay. So Crispina says it's not going to be pending. It's going to be resolved. It's still going to look like that promise, just with the word resolved. Do you think, or is it still going to look like this, but with resolved, or
so.
something else? Okay. Well, let's try it. All right. The best way to go for it. Oops. Maybe I didn't save. I don't think I saved. Save. Boom. We get back all the data. Nothing changed except for the word await.
once they're resolved.
So it waited. So you can only remember async await. This only works inside of an asynchronous call, and it makes things a bit more synchronous within that asynchronous function. So it's still non-blocking. So if I have console log here, it still would like print that. But I've got instead it says, all right, I'm going to await to get this response back. And I'm going to save it as the variable. And only after that happens, then I'll move to this line. It waits right there for that response. So again, like this is what we would have wanted. So if we were before when we were doing dot then res dot yada yada, now we don't need that then, right? Or in this situation, we could just do response dot data dot whatever that for each.
So then this bypasses the then. This gets the data stored to a variable and then you can work.
Mm-hmm. Still asynchronous. You're not.
So, another thing that async does, very sort of async function.
Yeah, and you can only use await inside of an asynchronous function. That's a good clarification.
Usually are bundled together.
Yeah,
Or like, what are other reasons for you to do this?
so this is the main one that I know about at least.
Wait, why is this better? I mean, it's effectively the same thing.
No, well, before we would then have done, right before we would have just chained a dot then on here.
Right, but it's the same thing.
Okay, so some people are saying this is the same thing. They don't really see the benefit. So let's check something. That's fair. Let's see if we can see the benefit somewhere else. Okay. Yeah, Johnny?
What if like there's some access request that you start chaining multiple thens? How would you do this similar?
Right, yeah, so that's kind of what we're going into. That's a good instinct. All right, so let me make some random async functions, all right? Let's say I have a doubler function, doubler, and it's going to take in a number, right? And it returns, say, a number times 2, right? That seems fair. We've seen this function not as an asynchronous function in the past. Cool. And then I'll make another one. Let's make a couple. Async, and let's say function square. That takes in a number, and I'm going to return number times the number. Okay, and let's do another one. I'll say async function. I'm going to do multiply. And this takes in the 2 numbers, num1 and num2. Oops. And this is just going to return num1 times num2. Okay, are we okay with everything that's up here? All right, so let's pretend I've got a number. Like I want to call a function that is going to do some math for me. All right? It's going to take in a number, and it's going to double that number, and then with that doubled number, it's going to square that number. Okay? And then I also want to then multiply the doubled number and the squared number. So let's see what this looks like with how we've been writing. Okay, so if I were to do that, let's say I have a function called doMath, right? And it takes in a number, and I say, I'm going to call our function doubler, and I'm going to pass in the number. So far, so good. Okay, so then we would do, hang on, that takes, okay. I would change my dot then. And this is going to give me back a number. I'm going to say double because it's been doubled, okay? Just so, because I'm going to keep variables consistent for this thing because I don't want it to get confusing in a minute. Okay, so then that way that's response is that number that's been doubled. And then let's say I want to return the square of double. Okay, we still all right? All right, and so then I'm going to have squared. And I want to return multiply of double and squared. Right, so I'm using the outcome from two different promise calls. Okay, and then I want my answer, and I'm going to just console log my answer. Okay, can we read this? Did I write this right? Yeah, I'm referring to something I wrote earlier today, or yesterday. All right, well, let's give it a shot. It's a,
Just to confirm real quick, the async turns the function's promise. And so that's why we're using that. Because otherwise you would just use let double equals double or not.
yeah.
Let square equals double, whatever, and you would just turn multiply those two variables. So then it's just making it less variables or something.
So I'm using then, no, because I want these to be asynchronous functions. This is a hypothetical situation because this is kind of stupid because I'm just doing math, right? And if math is like a constant speed operation, there's no need for us to ever write a strictly mathematical problem that returns an asynchronous problem. This is just an example because what if it wasn't math, but it was a querying of one database, querying another database, taking those two queries and putting them into their own query.
Well, even with that, is it better to pick like that when you see and work better but this variable, this variable.
Well, you can't, with what we know right now, you can't do that because of the way we saw it console logs that pending. Remember promise that pending?
So they would just be promises.
That's right.
You can do calculation of promises.
Sorry?
You can do calculation.
Well, this is just, I mean, this is a fictitious example of a situation where we're making multiple promise calls.
Just so we can see how.
Just to see the advantages of async in a way. We're not?
Can I ask you, write down the word what is during the number, like what meaning whiteboard or before do this right now and then
Sure.
step by step of what's happening.
Yeah, I do want to just make sure that this works first, and then I'll do that. Let me just check something. So if I do math at the number 4, console log it. Oh no, we don't have to because our end result will get console log. Let me just check. Okay, we get the number 512. Okay, so it seems to be working. Let's try it out. Okay, so Renat's asking what's actually happening here. It's hard to follow, right? I mean, that's why Renat's asking. If it was regular method, you probably wouldn't really ask me to do this because it'd be kind of easy to see, possibly. So, but it's kind of confusing because we've got all of these nested promises which are essential to what we're doing at the moment. So if we had, we've got our numbers 4 and doubler, we'll call doubler on the number, right? This is going to return the number 8, right? So this is going to return 8, and so then in our return square of 8, we have 8 passed into square. So we're going to square of 8. So this is going to return 64. I think it's 8 times 8, yeah. And so then, after we get that back, that's squared is now 64. So this is double and squared. Then we're going to multiply with double 8 times 64. So 8 times 64. Can anyone confirm that that's 500? It is? Thank you. So 8 times 64, that returns 512, I think was our number. And then that becomes the answer, and it gets blocked. Yeah, it's a pretty roundabout way of getting that answer.
I'm just saying with callbacks, I'm calling each function.
Yeah, you could do this with like callback things, right? But the whole point is that this is how we've been doing promises. We've been doing all of our GET requests, and then we've been chaining on thens. And it's been okay. It's been all right, but there's situations like this where I'm using the output here from here. This doubled one. I'm using it down here with the one that was dependent on that. So it's getting pretty nested. This is hard to read. It's so hard to read that in 3 mathematical operations, we had to do it on a whiteboard, right? And that's totally fair because it is hard to read. Okay, so let's see why async and await is kind of cool. So let's write another function. Let's write an async function here, function that's called better math. Okay, and it also takes in a number. And we're going to say let double, because that's what we got here, right? And we'll just say equals await. And we'll say doubler of the number. Question so far? All right, cool. So then let's go let squared, because that was our next call. Since this is awaiting, we'll actually have double this time. We'll say await of square with double inside. Okay. And then we had that multiply we wanted to do. So we'll say let answer equal the await of multiply of double and squared. And we'll just log answer. Okay, so these are not doing the exact same thing, but one is written like that and one is written like this. So let's try it, make sure we get the same result. Better math. Still 512. Yeah.
And then just to confirm, we didn't do that even without the awaits async. They were promises, because it would have been a promise. That would have been great.
Yeah. So here we can.
So we leave async, but
We didn't have a way to be mayhem. Right, that's definitely not what we want.
So await waits until the function gets the data.
Yep.
It resolves it, then stores it to the variable. It's going down. It waits until it gets data and stores it.
Mm-hmm. But you can only use this inside of asynchronous functions. So it's to make asynchronous functions seem more synchronous. However, it still can be tricky. Do we all see like the improvement?
Why does that function have to be synchronous? How does that the other one? Why does it not?
You can only use a wait inside of an asynchronous function.
And async and await is not strictly used for axios. It's used for functions in general.
Yep, right. It's working here. Not no Axios is here.
I want to make sure, like,
Yeah, yeah.
As an example, like in real life.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, any asynchronous thing. So it doesn't have to be Axios. You could use it with fetch. You could use it with probably XML HTTP request, which would be crazy to mix like something from ES7 or ES9 with something from ES5. But yeah, you can totally use it. Morteza.
Should have async Dabbler as well to use it in the same another function.
I missed it.
Asynchronous word sync is async. We should have it in front of our Dabbler as well. Call it here.
I made these so they would return a promise. If async is in front of a function, it returns the promise. See, if I didn't have async here, right, this would just be a regular math function. And so our example would be like totally normal.
I think you know where to use it. You could effectively remove the other async here. I mean, always down there and actually put these up here.
No.
I mean, you still have to wait to resolve.
No, it waits here. In order for me to have double here, I have to wait here.
Right, but if you have it, say, here.
No. I mean, there's nothing for it to wait for.
Can you say what it's waiting for on the bottom? Because I still don't get that.
It's waiting for the promise to resolve. This returns a promise. This is waiting for that promise to resolve. Or not?
I wonder about the time all these things happen. And
The time complexity?
yeah, of the better math now
Oh.
to execute. Is the time now different? Is it slower now that we use the way?
I think it should be the same. But I don't know. It's supposed to be the same. I don't know if it is. Mateo?
So you use async on the function declaration, and then you use await on the definition.
Yeah.
Await on
Any promise that you want to await for.
actually using.
Like this is, right, this returns a promise. I am waiting for the result of that promise. I want that number to come back. Or I want all my data to come back before I use it here. So I'm waiting for that result.
Could it be like on the actual callback, like if you had doubler num, that actually be a whole function right there? And
What do you mean?
so like if you actually put the function definition doubler right callback,
Oh.
it'll be the same thing.
I don't know. I think so. This is kind of like to avoid all these callbacks and stuff.
I'm just trying to see if like you're using a wave on doubler, use the doubler.
I think it can't be used with callbacks. Because a callback is like a synchronous call. Maybe you put async in front of that, but I don't know if you can nest asyncs.
Okay, that's kind of, you can use async in front of the definition, function, or yes, 6, or whatever you have running there. Await isn't going to be in front of that, to be furnished with all, all.
I think so. I'm a little confused by the question, but yeah, I mean, you're not supposed to use it with callbacks, supposedly. I highly encourage you, if you have like ideas to try, do it. Try it, definitely. That's like, if you find something that's working, that's cool, let me know, show me. This is like a very clean way to write this code. If I threw a bunch of callbacks in here, it'd be like a lot less clean too, a lot less like reusability. Right now I can still use doubler and square and multiply other places in my code. Johnny.
Share all this example.
Yep.
In the
Spina.
So you said that the reason for await and async is so that we can wait for, or we use promises to wait for different API requests, right?
I mean, it waits for a promise to be resolved.
Okay. So a real world application of this would be like a website that had multiple things displayed, like a Fox News or something, like weather and like.
Yeah, anywhere you use like an API call, you could use it async in a way.
Okay.
They take a while to get comfortable with. More important that you can use then and stuff. But there are situations like where you might be querying. You might make a second query dependent on the first query, and then like this makes it just significantly easier to read. This is so much more readable, right? There's nothing actually wrong with this. For a long time, this was all that there was. This was a huge improvement from callback help. But this is like even nicer. Yeah.
So let's say we're using the Studio API. And
Okay.
up to let's square. Square would be like the inner response. So it will be, let's say we want to get the movie titles. We'll start using the variable. Let's square dot title.
I'm pretty sure if you use that, you're going to get an array of objects, right? So an array doesn't have the property title on it. And you could loop through it. Yeah.
Okay, so the variables will become the input response, and response, and now we go down the chain.
I'm not sure if I understand.
Like the pseudo Ghibli API,
Yep.
went to 2.10.
Oh, yeah.
So this example would go like double and square. Square would be kind of like the second .NET.
Yeah, movie titles, I mean, you should only just need one await. We did that in the fire response earlier, and then we had that response, which was all of the data. Mateo?
So you wouldn't need a wait in front of that. At the bottom 35.
I wouldn't need an await in front of it? Oh, no, you can't use await. You can only use await inside of an asynchronous thing. Right? This is not to make your code run synchronously. Let's make that like very clear. This is to make asynchronous code appear more synchronously. So this doesn't block the call stack. This would happen, and then still other functions and codes could run, and it gets moved over to the browser API, and then it would come back.
actually, but you could technically use that if you wanted to use it somewhere else, right? Like if you wanted to use the value of that man in another function, you could use a way using another async.
Yeah, because this returns a promise.
Which you have to use.
If you want to wait for it to come back.
Otherwise, all those other ways won't be good enough to do that automatically.
This still, right now, this is just console logging an answer. So it's like, but if we returned something that was still a promise. Yeah, I mean, this is still asynchronous code, right? If I refresh this page, I still get the word happens before. This is non-blocking. As soon as this function gets called, it moves over to the web browser API in the event loop. It's not blocking the code. So even though this all looks synchronous, this is still asynchronous code. It still gets moved over to the web browser API.
Like they were saying, if I were to use that better math function in another function, I would need to put the weight in front of it.
Yeah, but that other function would also have to be asynchronous. It's a head trip, this one, right? Kind of fun. It makes code look really clean, though. Let's see, what else am I missing anything? Oh, so we could talk about error handling a little bit. So, okay, let's say I get rid of all this because we don't need it. I already put it in the code snippets, so chill. Okay, so if I had if we go back to the fire request or something, so I said const, and I have fire request, and I want this to be an async. Thing takes no arguments. Well, maybe I'll pass in a URL. And then, so if I think like, I want to do error handling, and I'm not using like .then and then .catch stuff, you still use this word try and catch. It looks like this. You write try, and then, oops. And then here you write catch. It's kind of like an if-else in a sense. Catch would be it takes in an error. Okay, so try. Let's say I have a response. I want to await this axios.get. And I have something here for me to use just to get all those posts. But let's say I only want one post that I know we don't actually have. There is no 900. Okay. I can then log response.data, or here when it throws an error, because await still will throw an error. This is just how I can catch that error. I can log error thrown was, and pass in the error. Oh, actually, this can just be the URL. My mistake. I don't need this. Questions on this code so far? Yeah, Johnny?
Is response variable that's declared?
Good idea.
And what is try the keyword? If it doesn't.
It's going to try this API, this
Okay.
asynchronous call here.
Goes there. If it's catch,
Yep. Yeah, that's it.
At the let response, is that going to be returned anywhere?
Right now it's console logging, but if I wanted a return from this, I would return response.data. But don't forget that would be still like, it wouldn't necessarily come at the right time. So for our purposes, what we've been doing is like setting a variable outside of the scope right? That gets updated after the call. We've been doing that a lot. Or calling the next thing specifically inside of here. So let's try it. See what happens. Syntax error. That's not something that got caught. What was it? Let's see. What do we think the syntax error is? Good question. 11, supposedly. Missing what? This is missing. Oh, I see. There? We're good. Right, so that's our error that got thrown. The error thrown was error request failed status code 404. Because I'm trying to get a baloney post. If I just wanted to get, like, I think it probably is a post number 9. So I get that post. Right, that's what try catch is doing. It says, hey, try this. If there's an error thrown in here, catch it and do this. But there.
So is inside the try, is that like
No. Because then we were doing like, we were waiting for our call and then we were saying, like, then res function response, whatever, right? This is just saying try all of this code. Because I could have another await thing here. It's just like, I could have a series. I don't need any then for this situation. This is how you would write it without thens. You could still use then. This is still going to be an asynchronous. This is still going to return a promise.
what was the point? To have either the catch after?
Of try? Yeah, this is how you error handle with this. You're not?
I'm trying to understand the point of doing this rather than doing the actions get and what does it give us extra?
Sorry? What was the last sentence?
What does using async, await, try, catch give us as a rather than the actions get and then catch?
So you're asking like what's its advantage?
The extra value, yeah, the advantage.
Well, the advantage is like really back in that last example with like the math. It's significantly more readable. It makes asynchronous code read as if it's synchronous to the human eye. The advantage for the machine, I don't know if there really is one. And you definitely don't have to use it. It's what's like the newest, most current way of dealing with like promises and stuff. It's considered like it's cleaner code. It's more easy to read. But there's nothing like wrong with the other one. David.
So if you have, it's supposed to mean, supposed to get some synchronicity to async. So if you have like, 3 multiple access calls at the same time, you kind of pick and choose like which one you want. If they're just going random numbers.
So if you're using multiple access calls at the exact same time,
And you throw random numbers, you can kind of pick.
well, you're probably looking for promise.all in that situation. Promise.all is something that promises have that takes in like an array of promises and waits for all of them to be resolved before it continues.
And then, I don't know.
Okay, it might be beyond. I think there's some resource stuff about promise.all. Yeah. For Davey's question, he was asking about. I was a little unsure completely what the question was, but the question was talking about if you wanted to have multiple like requests like that are all firing at the exact same time. I think of it as if you can just pick a random order for them.
And no, I mean, give like random values, right? They say 1, 2, 3,
Right.
3, 2, 1, or whatever. We kind of give it some kind of order as to which one we block first.
Yeah, you definitely could. So if he was saying if you have multiple calls that then you want to log their order, if they give back a random number and they log and you want to log the order like in numerical order, you could then use those values and sort them and like loop through those in Lago. And I was saying that if he's interested in multiple calls at the exact same time, he should look into promise.all, which essentially it's something built in that takes in multiple promises and waits for all of them to be resolved before continuing.
That would not be good for your each.
Oh, well, it's still asynchronous.
Also,
It's still non-blocking. But that's good. I'm glad you're thinking about the user experience. He says that wouldn't be good for your page. I'm saying it's okay because it's still all asynchronous. So the page would still be fine while it's waiting. Mateo.
So in that try block, that's more of a side effect that's going to happen. That's not going to affect your return. Aren't you saying to sign it outside or whatever, another variable? I've been trying to do that over here. I guess I'm doing it wrong.
This is the try block is all the code that you want to run and to keep trying until there's an error, and then if there's an error, it gets caught in the catch block. So this doesn't have like a specific return value.
So for example, then, like we did that dog one, we had all the dogs we assigned to like a variable on the page. How would we do that?
I don't know what we're talking about.
We had like the dog API.
Okay.
Like, hey, how can you do about catching every single time you say to an object page? And so
Yeah, you could still update an object on the page. There can still be a variable outside of the scope. Like if I just did something like let posts equal that. Sorry? Line 8? Well, I could just, it's within my scope.
and how would we reach that? How do we get that?
Well, let's fire this before thing even loads. I think we'll probably have it. If it updates. Actually, that's not going to quite work, is it? I don't know. Let's see. I probably wouldn't write it like this. I would make my callback function here. But let's try it. Let's see what happens. Oh, right. It's not going to work, of course. We got to throw in debugger. Let's say down here. The posts. Oops. Looks like it's still empty. Must have not resolved yet. Yeah. So you're asking how could I save this information?
Yeah, I mean, you said outside of it, so I was trying to how would you
Well, the debugger is running so quick. But if I needed, like, if I had it on a button that I made this request, like, and I fired it immediately, and then I was going to see things. If I gave this enough time, it would upload. Personally, I would use a callback function inside of this. Okay. Like, what do you want to do with it?
Whatever you, and I think like a code use case, it seems like your code is just firing out of the way it is. And that doesn't seem like that's very.
Tactless, not wrong. If you just said like draw posts or display posts, this could take in an array. Or actually, I should make this. I'm going to make this function. Okay. So then if we want to grab our UL or something, I guess, we can go look at our, let's make a UL, give it a class, posts. All right. So we go here, and then we can say, where is our JS? So posts equal document that query selector posts post selector for each post. Oops. And I'll say let ULI equal document dot create element li ULI dot inner HTML or inner text. What is this, like that? Equals post dot. They even have on them. I'll take a guess. Body, and then we'll say posts dot append new li. I'll write this, take in a URL and a callback. And
That's what you meant by not even try, but.
fire request, display post, and then I will take callback. It's through in there. Post.for each is not a function. That's because I did array instead of posts. And this, oh, well, hang on, let me make it back to an array. Like this array. There you go. What?
This is definitely to show what we're doing, is to make sure that we have that.
Yep.
That was a problem. The way that you were saying without, and you don't know when you get the data, so it's like.
Yeah, I mean, so in React we can add redux and things, and it can sort and organize the data. Then it lets you know that it updates the state, and then we can reset things like that.
That's all the code we had to write for that. Dog assignment.
I don't know. I don't remember that assignment. Probably. I think you probably had to make an image tag or something. I don't know.
Can I ask a basic question?
Sure.
Why did you choose before to not like to redefine your computer?
Oh, I thought it might work and be faster. was just trying to be lazy. It still kind of would work because, like, when we were able to do, it just you have to have the information back. We weren't doing anything, right? We were just immediately trying to print stuff, so that wasn't like very good. But if I had a button, that on the click would then go through posts, but I've made that call immediately. I probably have that information by the time the user clicks on the button. That makes sense? But it's not ideal. This is a for sure thing. Questions on try, catch, async, await? Yeah,
Just to confirm.
go for it.
You're not going to, in the try block, it's not going to run the callback function until it gets the argument that is the await.
Correct. Yep. So for those of you who couldn't hear, Mateo says, just to confirm, we're not going to call this callback until we've already our promise from our Axios call has already been resolved and we have the data. Totally correct, right? We are waiting. This is await, just wait until that's resolved. And once it's resolved, we can grab the data from that response and we can just pass it into to whatever function we want. I did this so I can use multiple different callbacks, because they're all kind of the Axios seems to always give back response.data and then whatever you're looking for. So knowing that, I'm taking advantage of that, making this kind of flexible.
Will you be able to share that?
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if I put posts down here as an empty array and made the fire request also outside. I'll try that later. I'll try it afterwards. Or should I try it now? What do we want? Okay, I'll copy and paste all this so that it's in there already, because it won't look the same when we're done. Because I kind of want to see if we can get that other way to work for people too, because I know this is possibly a little harder. It's a better way of writing it.
You mean create the functions outside the add event listener? All the functions within the add event listener?
Yeah, so I'm talking about making it, going back to this thing. Curious how we can get this to work. And let's just see. See if we can update posts. Probably, but this will fire immediately. It might not work. Let's see if we can get it to work. Still empty. If it hasn't resolved yet. It's too fast. So yeah, probably do it the other way.
Now, in your callback, could you then push it to the book?
Would that work then? I mean, I think if we're referring to posts inside of here, that'd be fine. But then we wouldn't really. I mean, you could update a variable there too. Depends on what it just depends on what you're trying to do. All right, we're getting into like something else. Any other final questions on await async? Yeah, Takia. You may not have Axios in your HTML. Any other questions? All right, cool. So that's that. That's the end. Congratulations. Async and await. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it works well for you. Okay, thank you. So yeah, take some time and study today. Right? All right. There isn't an async await homework.